Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So, it's fine. Yeah, I'm fine, thanks. Here we are again. When was the last time I was here?
April?
April.
I think, did we have it, like, April? Oh, June.
June. So, long time.
New
New floor. So I've been, November, December, I do a lot of teaching. In January, February, March, I recover. Yeah, the November, December is very rewarding. I have very good friends in Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. And in Thailand, you probably heard me talk about this, but there's a group called the Angel Group from Bangkok, and they organize my Thai retreats. And among the Angel Group are 5 sisters, all into Dharma, and they come from a business background, and they're very good entrepreneurs, but they try to use a lot of their entrepreneurial skills for philanthropic work. So they organize retreats. They do a lot of retreats. I've been doing it for many years and organize retreats. And then every 2 or 3 years, they organize a public health initiative, quite grand in scale. And this year they did one in Nan province. And in that province, there are a lot of hill people who don't get much medical care. So they worked for 2 years or more organizing a one-day clinic. And that one-day clinic involved 2,500 cases. They had 70 doctors, 70 dentists, 70 dental chairs with all the dental technicians for one day. They had skincare. I think they did like 1,100 eye examinations. This is in one day. And you imagine the organization. Now, the Angel Group aren't doctors. The doctors are already set, like the dentists have their equipment all set up. They're ready to go. But someone has to organize the bureaucracies, the people, get the people there. So they probably rented all the buses in Nan in the town, bussed all the people in. They had 3,000 meals, dishes, plus rice. It was stunning. It was just so, and they had everyone got tested for COVID beforehand. I knew some of the doctors, and so I just floated around, just absorbing the joy of generosity, and the dentists. I mean, they were exhausted at the end of the day because they were just one case after the other. And that combination of philanthropic, humanitarian work, and meditation. So after that, we had the meditation retreat. And I said to these good folk, I said, let's make it a small retreat where you have more chance to. So we had a 10-day retreat with about 35 people. And that was really, really great for them, great for me. And then in Singapore, there's two groups, the Firefly Mission and Buddha Dhamma Foundation. They are sort of related. Buddha Dhamma Foundation organizes retreats, supports monasteries. Firefly Mission is it's a charity that raises funds and then builds schools in Laos and has done in Burma. So during COVID, I think they built 7 schools. And they organize with the local governments to, local governments obviously supply the teachers and curriculum. And then the organizers go to Laos and they present the schools and they have the kids there and they do a video and there's singing and there's giving out of books. And in the non-initiative, we went, they also gave, the schools were asking, because they do a lot of things in one area in that one time. So the schools are asking for, among other things, well, what we really need, we don't need books, we need teachers. So I think they funded 5 schools, 1 teacher for 1 year. They raised the funds for that, they're fundraisers. But also they donated that, what did they need? They needed water tanks because the water supply wasn't stable during the summer season, during the days. So the school I went to, they had 6 big water tanks. And then, of course, they wanted to turn the kids on to something. So they had toys, fluffy toys like teddy bears and things. And so then I was able to give fluffy toys to little children. Wow. Isn't that sweet? It was really sweet. And I mean, these angels are so lovely. They also thought, well, the kids need ice cream too. So every kid got an ice cream. It was so lovely. And so I, like this morning, I was reminded of that famous dialogue in the texts where the Buddha says to the bhikkhus something like, if you knew what I knew about generosity, you'd share the last grain of rice in your alms bowl. And that's a good one to keep in mind, isn't it? Anytime I have an opportunity to give, do it. Anytime if you've got an opportunity to forgive, do it. Anytime you have a chance to be sensitive and caring, do it. Because there's lots of times you forget. And that pays huge dividends in the feelings of the heart. Like we were talking in the kitchen with Jane, and I said, Jane, we were talking about cooking and liking cooking. She said, well, I don't like to do fancy cooking, but I love to feed people. And it's true, isn't it? It's the kind of joy of a spiritual life. Because, these kind of refinements of mindfulness and so on that we talk about, they're important, but then the overall life of compassion and caring really is the dominant, I would say, the dominant kind of theme of our lives. Service. I was listening. Do you know who Neem Karoli Baba is? Neem Karoli Baba was the teacher of Ramdas. And one of my great disappointments in life is that I miss seeing him because I was living above. He was in Nainital with this Ramdas scene going on. And I was living above Nainital in Almora. That was in 1971. And I kind of heard there was something going on, but I was living on my own. And before I became a monk, in a kind of a shack and kind of just getting into meditation. And he was the most beautiful being. And in his line was, my life is here to serve you. And then he says, imagine everyone is your mother. Treat everyone like your mother. Now, if you had issues with your mother, it'd be difficult. But I have a fabulous mother, so that really hits home. So the opening of the heart in these very grand ways is more than just a meditation. That kind of what practice do you do? Well, sometimes I do metta, and then sometimes I do anapanasati. That's a bit too clinical for me, a bit too kind of, is life really is meditation one thing and the rest of life is another thing? Well, I don't think so. So that opening of the heart, I do feel that that's where you find the end of suffering, the end of craving. Because if you look at the Four Noble Truths, it's saying there is suffering, there's the cause, there's the end, and there's the path. And the end of suffering is described as cessation, nirodha, the abandonment of craving, the abandonment of wanting. Sometimes when you look at that, it seems like, oh, that's the goal. And if I were just, hammer away at my suffering, then I'll get to that goal, and then that's the ball game. I'm finished, which is, maybe it works that way, but there's also a more immediate way of looking at that, and that's feeding people or whatever ways those opportunities arise. Well, that doesn't mean in the feeding of people, they might be actually ungrateful. You feed them and they say, the dal's got too much salt. That's just the part. It just works that way. But the intention to enter into life as much as possible in that way is not a question of desire. It's not like some selfish, some kind of desire pattern that I have to fulfill myself in some way. Like, if I feed you, I'll be happy. It's just, if I feed you, I will be happy from that activity. So always bear in mind that larger, I think we do as a Buddhist community, we have tremendous generosity and tremendous kindness, but it's good to keep that in perspective. So then in the development of meditation, when I contemplate my own life as a meditator, well, the early years were horrible. You wouldn't have want to know me 30 years, 35, 40 years ago. I was like, there are a lot of darkness I just had to sit through. Just a lot of, and because there were no escapes, no distractions. It's like you got sticky rice in your mind, mate. That's it. That's all there is. And I was talking about this idea of resolving things. And so a lot of those heavy habits of mind, depressions and fears, were resolved just through pure endurance. But they were resolved within the context of good living, of a fabulous teacher, two fabulous teachers, many very good teachers, good peers, good kalyanamitta, going through similar kind of inner dramas, um, and routine, good, wholesome, day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out routines, moral living all the time. Kalyana Mitta who have the same moral say moral standard, with the same religious spiritual aspiration, and just when you want to meditate, meditate. When you don't want to meditate, meditate. Morning meditation, evening meditation, and how much of that was fun? 5%. How much of that was, well, it's just like this now, and how much of that was heat and mosquitoes and concrete floors and all of that. But all the time, it's like this. Life feels like this. What's the cause of suffering? Well, it's the concrete floor. No. It's the wanting. It's the wanting. It's the wanting. And you keep, just that. And Ajahn Chah would just constantly say, just, give it 5 years and you'll feel a bit better. Like, that was it. you think, oh, you were with a master and, and he gave you the mantra and it's like he just, like this Buddha back here just beamed you into Nibbana. Good luck. It doesn't work that way. And, the kind of sobriety of Luang Por Chah in that way, the kind of like earthiness of him. No, you've not developed your mind. You come here and you want to be the Buddha tomorrow. Give it up. Just be a better person and just do it. Just do this work. And it was true. So that's part of resolving things. And I think family life does that, wears down the rougher edges, and working life. And so all of us have been in our Ajahn Chah situations probably in different ways. But there comes a time where I think there's enough emotional um, intelligence, is that the word we use? And emotional balance, where the heaviness of our karma no longer dominates so much. And then I think we still find there's still these niggling habits, the habits of like complaining, or the habits of self-doubt, or the habits in the negative sense. There are also good habits. There are the kind of wholesome habits of no matter what, I'm not going to kill. Panatipata, where no matter what, I'm not going to be involved in any kind of extortion of goods from other people in illegal ways. Adinadanas and right speech. No, I'm not going to use humor and hurt you. I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to mock you. I'm not going to make fun of you. I'm not going to make fun of your race or your size or whatever it might be. It's just kind of the barami of moral understanding, the barami of sobriety. Like, no, you took enough acid already, Viradhammo. You've been there, you've done that. And that's the kind of foundation for our more refined parts of our life. So there are these really wholesome things which are now playing in our lives. And then we have the good memories of the generosity we've been involved with. When I see older people, not so much in our Buddhist community, for different reasons, I see someone who hasn't really taken the opportunities of generosity and really expressed themselves in generous way. Not that they were kind of mean, but they've never taken that more active sense of dana that we have in Buddhism, and they haven't done that. I see, they don't have a wealth of memories, and their memories are pretty trivial. And where do they go to? They don't really have a kind of joyous places that they can go to. So that's all really important. And that begins to play out. And so our meditation is more, I would say, it's more refined, and you can do more work. And then you come up to the insidious habits of just ego thinking, worrying about something, complaining about something, and they're not like necessarily emotionally powerful, but they preoccupy our attention a lot, a lot. And as meditators, of course, we try to get rid of them in our meditation, but that's you'll find that's unsuccessful. And yet to not pay attention to that, to not somehow inquire into that would also limit our life to superficiality of thought. And I think at that stage in our practice, then the kind of consideration is around silence, that really the only real meditation is to abandon all thought. It's just that simple. Just abandon it, harbor no thoughts. Now, that has to be done in the context of not trying to get rid of thinking. It's much, much different. So you don't say that to a beginner. Just let go of thinking. Can't do it. But at some point you say, I'm not going there anymore. I'm not going to that worrying mind. I'm not going to that complaining place. I'm not going to roads to self-doubt. I'm not going to finding fault with my partner. I'm just not going to go there anymore. And that's the giving up of rebirth. You know, the abandonment of craving, the abandonment of the whole sense of self-becoming. And I would say where silence is really accessed is through the heart. You cannot put an end to thinking by thinking, believe it or not. So oftentimes meditators, you know, they notice they're thinking about tomorrow, and then they have a strategy about not thinking about tomorrow, which is a thinking strategy about not thinking about tomorrow, and it just revolves around itself. So I think that's an important consideration. Is silence something that's available to us, and is it something that we tune into? And it is. Silence, consciousness is silent. Awareness is silent. It's always there. Peace is always there. And so what I was suggesting just in this meditation was wait. Just wait. And there's the silence. That's all. It's not something you get, it's something you notice. Because if I'm trying to get something, it's always an object called something that is silence. So then I meditate looking for silence. No, that's the whole, that's like, it doesn't work that way. It's not, it's not environmental or situational silence. It's the natural silence of consciousness, of awareness, of puru, whatever you want to call that. And it's always there. So the mind turning towards that in a way which is healthy, which is interested, which is not dismissing thought, but no longer harboring all these thought constructs, which are just kind of ego thoughts, really. Giving that up, abandoning that. And the way of the heart then is like tuning into something that we are sometimes in our, I would say we're very, I don't know if I don't live in contemporary culture, I live in monastic culture, but I would say our culture is overly directed to thought. Would that be heavy with, head heavy maybe? Yeah. But if you think about bhakti cultures, kind of cultures of Christian mysticism, or the lovers of Sufism, or like Neem Karoli Baba and people like that, they could be top heavy maybe with bhakti, that could be, but you can see their conditioning in that kind of culture is much more of something which isn't intellectual, something which comes from the heart. If when I travel in Southeast Asia, I notice that the devotional quality of these folk is much more natural. It's just kind of part of their human upbringing. Theravada Buddhism, its translations come from Presbyterians. Nothing against Presbyterians, but there's a certain dryness to it, right? If you go to Sri Lanka, the kind of devotion of Sri Lanka Dayakas, it's different. It's very, very different. Each culture has its limitations. So a devotional culture can be superstitious, or intellectual culture can be too head-centered. So there, like I would say in Theravada Buddhism, there's a danger of misunderstanding or misconceiving that because I have a very refined intellectual analysis of life and suffering, that's wisdom. It's just an opinion. That's all it is. It's a clever opinion, which might be able to argue all other opinions under the table, but it's just an opinion, right? That's all it is. And yet there can be a sort of conceit that, I really know, because I've got all this really refined thinking. But then I think ask the person, well, is your mind ever silent? Probably they'll say, huh? Hey, what's silence got to do with it? But silence, I think, is the eloquence of enlightenment. You know, it's also like the language of the heart. When language of the heart is a feeling, but say in that horrible tragedy that we had with this family in Ottawa earlier, everyone I think felt it here, right? Right, very, very deeply in the heart, broken heart. Now that's a language, isn't it? But it's not in words. And it's a very pure language because it's not a language like when I felt that, there was no desire in that. Afterward, yeah, I mean, I didn't want these people to suffer, and I wish it wouldn't have happened, and that was horrible, horrible thing to happen. But in that feeling of deep, deep compassion, there was no desire in that. It was just this human connection to deep, deep suffering. Sure, I didn't want it to happen. Sure, how are these people going to cause this man going to cope, and et cetera, et cetera. That's the human functional part of my. But in the feeling of someone who is suffering, to me, there's no desire there. I might desire to help them, and I would help them, but that feeling to me is very pure. It's very honest, very direct. It's not moderated by ego thoughts. And to like if I was I do a lot of airports, by the way. I was in some airport somewhere sometime, and there was a mom with 3 kids and a father, and they were having the greatest time. Because usually moms are really stressed out with 3 kids. I've noticed in airports, right? But they were just having the greatest time. And I felt so happy. I felt so happy for them. What's that? That's mudita, that's the heart, connecting without the mediation of thinking. And that is the language. There's a truth in that, and there's a relevance in that. So, and there's a silence in that too. It's not like thinking, oh, I wish I had children. Never came up once. Not once. It was lovely, but I'm glad they're yours. But it was, it's just that silent appreciation of, and the more I think one inclines to silence, respects silence, hears silence, and refuses this movement towards egotistical thinking, refuses it in a good way. No, no, I'm not going there. No, I've been there, done that too many years. No, thank you very much. Which isn't repression. It's just no, I'm not going there. That refusal to go there is a non-direction, but the opening of the heart is a direction. And in that abiding, then the sensitivity to the Brahma Viharas, the kindness, loving kindness, compassion, joy, peace, they become much more obvious. So just like walking through a woodland, this is the best time to walk through a woodland because in about 3 weeks, it's going to be a bloodbath. The mosquitoes, and so I really love this time of year. And I just walk and just see the colors of the mosses. Just like color. And because the heart can be open to that, it's beautiful. And that's not some aesthetic sensitivity like agonizing over the color of the walls in the Dharma hall. That's all desire. So me and Ajahn Pavaro and Sirimeda, we sit down with color chips and we agonize over it's horrible. But we do it out of a sense of duty. But that's different. That's aesthetics. But just the kind of the touching of nature or the sound of the Or the sandhill cranes. We have two sandhill cranes nesting nearby. It's this great kind of loud. You think, how can a bird make such a loud sound? It's incredible. So there is that, and that's not in thought. That's in attentiveness. There's a quality of attention which is the spiritual life. Like Simone Wales, Veil, how do you pronounce her? Simone Veil? Simone Veil. Her descriptions of attention. Attention is the biggest gift we can give to anyone. It's the greatest gift we can, and it's not just sympathizing with someone. And to me, that seems what love is about, that kind of attention. And we have it both in its sort of beautiful manifestation of natural beauty, and we have it in its painful manifestation of human suffering. But it is attention, it is attentive, and it's not a function of desire. It's a function of being available to that, I would say. So for my own practice, I spend a lot of time, especially in those lovely morning meditations, just abiding at this center, at the heart center, getting to know that. If there's stress that going on, there isn't much stress in my life these days. Just if they're trying to figure out when was it stressful, I go to the throat. I just kind of got to get aware of that. There isn't much fear left. Used to be a lot of fear. Then I would go to the belly, but that whole area it's actually very, very interesting if one is willing to move away from the thinking mind. If I'm always in the thinking mind, I don't even notice that. I don't notice that the throat's closed, that the heart's, don't even notice the heart. It's kind of just dead zone. Never been known. So by no longer believing in the thinking mind, no longer picking that up, and having trust and awareness, and saying that to oneself, as the mind starts to like worry about something, you see, I think I'll trust and awareness, thank you. To like really draw a line right there. Thank you, thinking, but I think I'll trust and awareness. To disempower the nature of the habit, the belief in the nature of the habit, which although when we step back, we can see the futility of worry, not the futility of strategic thinking or planning, that's fine, but just the futility of it. Even though we understand that, it still grabs attention, or complaining, or self-disparagement, or self-doubt, but whatever it might be, it's a similar kind of pattern. So then trusting and awareness seems to kind of, how can I trust in awareness? I mean, I've got to think about this. Yeah, but I think I'll trust in awareness. Yeah, but I mean, tomorrow it's gonna, it's gonna happen tomorrow. And if I'm not, yeah, sure, but trust and awareness. But that's being, and that's the way habits work. They just keep coming back in it, and they're very believable, aren't they? Those voices are very, very believable, and yet they've been lying to us for years. It's like a ripoff. So without saying you shouldn't think, that's the danger, as I keep mentioning, to kind of make a firm commitment more to the silence of the mind, trusting in awareness. Luang Por Viradhammo, if you're listening to his talks, he's saying that a lot, trusting in awareness. And then you'll see that he talks about the still point of being. And that is, I would say, when we just wait, make no comment, then we notice the stillness of being. It's not just silence, it's also stillness. Because the movement grabs us. If we don't grab the movement, what's left? Stillness of being. And that is always there. That's always available. And to make that interesting rather than just hating thinking, that won't work out, or just trying to get rid of thought, or just judge your emotions as being wrong in some way, that That's not intelligent. That's just harsh. So the kind of exploring part of our mind, the interested part of our mind, and then developing more and more sensitivity to the heart, it reveals the human condition can be very beautiful. It's a very beautiful possibility. So I think that's sufficient. We can Handamaya.
Oh, yes. Handamayan Damakataya Sajukaram Dharamate Sadi
Okay.